Yerushalayim, Yerach and Shalom, the two roots of their vision of peace. And the Lord is playing upon the name here, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if thou hadst known in this thy day, even thou the things that are for thy peace. Our soul is our Jerusalem. We are our own worst enemy. Look at your tendency. When you go through the day, are you aware that there is a cloud around you? Either a cloud of healing and warmth and joy, or a dark cloud that people really don't want to meet or feel. Is it not true, and this applies to every human being here, that if we're thinking all day about how to create joy, then also, without looking for it, we're creating a cloud in which we ourselves are bathed? Is it not true, and this applies to everyone here, great and small, that when we create joy for a parent, a sibling, a teacher, a friend in the playground, then also something inside us says, life is good. Whereas the person who goes around quite happy to invent pain is actually hurting himself in the first instance and will never be at peace. He'll always be right, but he'll never be at peace. Is it not a microcosm of exactly the whole planet right now? And so this applies to us. This night and this morn, it hit me what actually many have said spontaneously when coming into the chapel of the Hermitage. There's peace. There are effects also which suggest that, little angels and little lights, but there's also a dense, peaceful, objective, double presence. The real presence shielded by a whole cloud of angelic wings. And inaudible singing, Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. And souls in a state of grace somehow sense it. Now, when one goes into that atmosphere, and especially when one spends much time there, a process happens which corresponds to a spiritual osmosis. It pervades also the imagination, the will, all the reactions of the being, in such a way that we somehow intuit, I can't use this expression, I can't raise my voice, I want to be in continuity. And that feeling of essential love, which comes from the tabernacle, somehow one feels one has to communicate. It's one whole, no compartments. But that applies also to everyone who draws near to the burning bush. Think, now as you open your mouth and your tongue to be a throne to that presence, how will I then use it? I have essential love in my being at Holy Communion. I will not allow one single word, gesture, or even look to be in discontinuity with that. But the Lord goes on. He actually does something rather surprising, given that he is the King of Peace. He becomes very loud. He takes physical action. Take these things out of here. He overturns what is the means of existence of a whole army of money changers. He dares to upset the system, to rock the boat. He even makes a scourge out of a cord. Can you imagine the scene? authority. My house, or rather the house of my Father. He now uses language which they realize for them is heavy wording. It's eventually going to lead to a court case for blasphemy. But how much more does that apply to us? They had but types and shadows. Here we have the fullness of which they wept, the preparation. Some of you have heard this before, but therefore you can fast forward and go to sleep. Others haven't. So I'll say it again. What Jacinta said before dying. She had been informed, it seemed, in some way by our Blessed Lady that people were talking in chapel. She was in the hospital in Lisbon dying, and heaven did not want people talking in the presence. Nothing happened, and she got a message to the Cardinal Archbishop of Lisbon, head of the church in Portugal, to say that this message was from Our Lady. She did not want people talking in church. Now, many things have come through about this from the beyond. Some years ago, a good priest was quietly praying the twilight in his parish church, Compline presumably, before closing up and going to bed, at the end of a good day of pastoral work. In the course of the night, he had actually forgotten something and had to go unexpectedly back into the church. So from the sacristy he went in. It was just dark with the sanctuary lamp burning, but he put on a light just to see where he was going. The church was full of people. He looked down at them from the sanctuary and said in a clear voice, "How did you get in?" They just looked forward. Not a sound. He repeated the question, "Who let you in?" He couldn't understand. All he could do was return, baffled. But then he went back just to see if he was imagining things. He opened the door again. The sanctuary lamp was burning. The church was dark. And when he put the light on, no one was there. The following day he went to a priest friend of his, a very balanced priest friend that he could trust for his judgment, and told him what had just happened in the night. The good, balanced, experienced friend, priest, just said, "It's quite clear what you were seeing. It happens. Souls sometimes, by the mercy of our God, are allowed to make part of their purgatory there where they have offended. And the reason why they would have not been speaking, but only gazing in one direction, was that they were making reparation for all the times that they had freely talked in the presence of that same Blessed Sacrament." Recently in time, something similar happened here in our diocese. It happened to a cousin of one of my closest friends who belongs to this diocese. This is what happened. She was a pious lady, balanced and not at all given to hallucinations or anything at all out of the ordinary. But she was pious and she loved to pray for the Blessed Sacrament quietly. And so she was there in our cathedral, the cathedral precisely of the one who has his rights, Christ the King, here in Mullingar. And because it's a big cathedral with many pillars, the custodian didn't realize that actually there was somebody in that huge cathedral when he was locking up. And she heard this bolting noise. "Oh, they've locked the church and I can't get out." Well, she had a supernatural vision of things. Surely the Lord doesn't allow things to happen for no reason. I presume he wants me to pray all night. She couldn't, she was too tired. She prayed a while and then tried to get a few winks of sleep. I know where I'll go. There may be a cushion in there. She found a cushion in one of the confessionals. And actually she was able to go actually in the confession box on that cushion and go to sleep and just draw the curtains. What was her surprise when she intuited about midnight that there was a kind of shuffling. She put her nose out of the curtain of the confession box, and it was all happening. She looked towards the high altar, which is still there, and it was all happening. There was a complete high mass going on there. All the ministers were around, and there was one thing missing. They were all not touching the ground. She was scared out of her wits. She pulled the curtain back and tried to get some kind of sleep until the morning. Then they opened up the cathedral and she made a beeline for safety and told it to my friend, her cousin, who wanted to know what was going on. And I just told her simply what I've told you about the other case. And it's obvious what's happening there. It happened also in the life of Padre Pio, who would see things in church, people long dead. They were making reparation for negligence in the service of the High King. And this is Cathedral of Christ the King, Mullingar. Where does that leave you and me, my friends? From the little ones to the big ones and everyone in between, beware! We're treading on holy ground, and what we do outside is not allowed inside. The rules of charity outside are one thing, but here charity is exercised by respecting other people's silence and honouring the Lord, who has this part of earth for himself.